May I share something with you? A regret so sharp it still cuts me when I least expect it. It's such a simple thing. For words spoken with a gentleness I didn't deserve. But those 4 words have followed me through years of sleepless nights. Through all the empty chairs at every holiday table since. My name is James. I'm 31. And this story begins on a crisp December evening in Massachusetts, with snow falling softly outside my apartment window, and the glow of my laptop, illuminating a face that had grown too accustomed to solitude. The email arrived at 6:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line, Christmas dinner. Please come. Sender, Margaret Wells, my grandmother. I remember staring at it for a long moment before opening it, already formulating excuses in my mind. Work was hectic in Dovier reports, client presentations, the promotion I was chasing with single-minded focus. The thought of a 5-hour drive to rural Vermont, of small talk with relatives I barely knew anymore, of questions about my perpetually almost finished novelette, all felt exhausting before it even began. The email was brief, direct, and painfully sincere, like Grandma Margaret herself. Dear James, I'm having Christmas dinner at the farmhouse this year. Everyone will be. There your cousins are coming from as far as California. It would mean the world to me if you could join us. I know it's been too long since we've all been together. I have your grandfather's writing desk ready for you, as promised. It's been sitting in your old room for years now, waiting. Perhaps you could finally take it home and finish that book you've been working on. He always said you had his gift for words. Let me know if you can make it, but it's okay if you don't come. I understand how busy life gets when you're building your career. Love always, Grandma. P.S. I'm making your favorite apple pie with the cinnamon crust. I sighed and rubbed my eyes, feeling the familiar weight of obligation warring with ambition. 3 years had passed since my last visit to the Vermont farmhouse, where I'd spent every summer of my childhood. 3 years of promising to visit soon, of birthday calls that grew increasingly brief, of holiday cards containing gift cards rather than personal messages. It wasn't that I didn't love my grandmother. I did, deeply. But somewhere along the way, as my life in Boston expanded with professional responsibilities and social connections, the emotional tether to my rural roots had grown increasingly tenuous. The 5-hour drive had begun to feel like crossing an ocean rather than merely a few state lines. I clicked reply and stared at the blank message field. The cursor blinked patiently, awaiting words I couldn't seem to find. Honesty felt too harsh. I don't want to come. I'd rather work. Complete fabrication felt disrespectful. I've been called overseas suddenly. I'm terribly ill. In the end, I settled for a half-truth. Dear Grandma, thank you for the invitation. I've been swamped with work lately. We just landed a major client, and I'm leading the project. The timing is tough with deadlines right after New Year's. I'll try to make it, but I can't promise anything. Don't hold a seat for me, just in case. We'll catch up soon, I promise. Maybe I can come up in the spring when things slow down. The desk sounds wonderful, but it might be better to give it to one of the cousins who can visit more regularly. I'm barely at my own apartment these days, let alone able to appreciate an heirloom properly. Love, James. P.S. Save me a piece of that pie, if there are any leftovers. I hit send before I could reconsider, already turning my attention back to the presentation I'd been working on when her email arrived. Client needs, market projections, competitive analyses. These were concrete problems with clear solutions. So much more manageable than the nebulous weight of family expectations and long-distance relationships. My phone rang an hour later. Grandma Margaret, her name illuminated on my screen. I nearly let it go. To voicemail, a habit I'd developed when work was pressing, but some small voice of conscience made me answer. Hi, Grandma, I said, wedging the phone between ear and shoulder as I continued typing. James. Her voice was warm and clear, carrying the slight Vermont accent that had softened but never disappeared during her 82 years. Did you get my email about Christmas? I did. Just replied a little while ago. Haven't checked yet. These new reading glasses aren't quite right. Makes the computer screen a challenge. She paused. So will you come? The whole family would love to see you. I closed my eyes, fingers stilling on the keyboard. I really want to, Grandma. It's just work is insane right now. This new client could mean a promotion, maybe even a partnership track eventually. I understand, she said, with no hint of reproach. Your career is important. It's not just that, I continued, the excuses flowing more easily now. The drive is long, and the weather can be unpredictable this time of year. Plus, my apartment needs attention. I've barely been home enough to unpack from my business trip last month." Of course, she said, her tone still gentle. "You have your own life. I just thought, well, it would be nice to have everyone together. It's been a while." The unspoken hung in the air between us. It had been more than a while. It had been years of absences, of missed gatherings, of putting work and my own convenience ahead of family connections that once formed the core of my identity. "I'll try," I said finally, the words hollow, even to my own ears. "I just can't promise anything right now." There was a pause on the line, long enough that I wondered if the connection had dropped. Then, her voice softer now. "It's okay if you don't come. I understand." For simple words, spoken with such genuine acceptance that they should have comforted me. Instead, they pierced something deep inside, exposing a truth I wasn't ready to acknowledge. She expected my absence now, had come to anticipate my excuses. The grandson who once couldn't bear to leave Vermont at summer's end had become the adult who couldn't make time to return. "Grandma," I began, not sure what I was going to say. "You don't need to explain," she interrupted gently. "Life takes us where it takes us. Just know, there's always a place for you here when you're ready. The desk will wait." "I love you," I said, the words feeling simultaneously true and insufficient. "I love you too, James, more than you know." After we hung up, I sat motionless in my darkening apartment, her words echoing in my mind. "It's okay if you don't come. I understand." No guilt trip. No manipulation. No passive-aggressive sigh. Just simple acceptance of my choice, even when that choice was to prioritize everything else above her invitation. I returned to my presentation, pushing the conversation from my mind. The next 2 weeks were a blur of client meetings, office parties, and last-minute deadlines before the holiday break. I worked until exhaustion, fell into dreamless sleep, and repeated the cycle daily. The Christmas invitation receded in my awareness, becoming just another email buried in my inbox. On December 23rd, I found myself alone in the office, putting final touches on the presentation scheduled for January 2nd. My phone buzzed with a text from my cousin. "Ellie, are you coming to Grandma's tomorrow? She's got your name on the seating chart but says you're probably not making it. Last chance to change your mind. We miss you, stranger." I stared at the message for a long moment, a knot forming in my stomach. The family would be gathering without me. Again, Grandma Margaret would explain my absence to relatives who no longer expected my presence. The chair with my name would remain empty. "Can't make it," I texted back. "Swamped with work. Give everyone my love." Ellie replied with a sad face emoji. "And maybe next year." "Definitely," I responded, knowing even as I typed it that it was likely another empty promise. I spent Christmas Eve alone in my apartment, ordering Chinese takeout and watching old movies on Netflix. As snow fell outside my window, I tried not to picture the farmhouse in Vermont, the pine garland winding up the staircase, the fireplace crackling in the living room, the long dining table set with Grandma's holiday china and hand-crocheted placemats. I tried not to imagine the empty chair with my name on it. On Christmas morning, I called Grandma Margaret, reaching her voicemail instead. "Merry Christmas," I said after the beep. "Sorry I couldn't make it this year. Hope everyone is having a wonderful time. Love you." Brief, impersonal, safe. I sent a text to my mother who had flown in from Arizona. "Merry Christmas. How's everything at Grandma's?" Her reply came hours later. "Lovely gathering, but missing you. Grandma's not feeling well today, staying in bed. The doctor says it's just a cold. Call when you can." A twinge of concern quickly rationalized away. Grandma had always been healthy and resilient. A cold was nothing to worry about, especially with the house full of people to look after her. 3 days later, on December 28th, I was back at the office, leveraging the quiet holiday week to get ahead on projects. My phone rang as I was reviewing spreadsheets. My mother's number. "Hey Mom," I answered, sandwiching the phone between ear and shoulder as I continued typing. "How was the rest of Christmas?" The silence on the other end lasted just long enough for me to stop typing, a cold dread spreading through my chest before she even spoke. "James," she said, her voice breaking on my name. "Grandma's gone." The world stopped turning. What began as a simple cold had developed into pneumonia with devastating speed. The doctor had advised hospitalization, but Grandma Margaret's stubborn, independent Grandma Margaret had refused. Not on Christmas, she'd insisted. Not when everyone's here to celebrate. By the time she agreed to go on the morning of the 27th, it was too late. She went peacefully in her sleep, my mother said, in her own bed in the farmhouse she'd loved for 60 years. I sat motionless in my ergonomic office chair, in my climate-controlled hero eyes, surrounded by the trappings of the career I'd prioritized above all else. The career that now seemed meaningless in the face of the empty chair I'd chosen not to fill. "It's okay if you don't come," she had said. I understand. But it wasn't okay. And I hadn't understood that next time is never guaranteed. That distance grows with each declined invitation, that some absences can never be undone. I flew to Vermont the next day for a funeral rather than a family dinner. Stood in a snow-covered cemetery rather than around a festive table. Carried her casket instead of carrying on conversations I'd put off for someday. And all the while, those 4 words echoed with terrible finality. It's okay if you don't come. But it wasn't okay. It would never be okay again. 1 year has passed since I stood in that snow-covered Vermont cemetery. 365 days of living with the knowledge that some absences can never be filled. Some conversations can never be recovered. Some chairs remain eternally empty. The farmhouse, our family home for 3 generations, still stands among the rolling hills. Its red roof visible from the winding country road, long before you reach the driveway. It belongs to all of us now, shared among cousins and siblings, as a gathering place. A touchstone, a physical manifestation of the connections Grandma Margaret fought so hard to maintain. I've been there 6 times in the past year. More visits than I managed in the previous 5 years combined. Each time, I stay in my childhood bedroom, now furnished with my grandfather's writing desk, the one Grandma had saved for me. The one I had so casually suggested she give to one of the cousins who can visit more regularly. My cousin Ellie refused to let anyone else take it. "It was meant for you," she said firmly, when I arrived for the funeral. Grandma was very clear about that. She never stopped believing you'd come back eventually. The desk sits beneath the window that overlooks the apple orchard. In spring, pink blossoms dust the branches like snow. In summer, green leaves rustle in the breeze. In autumn, red fruit hangs heavy, waiting to be harvested for Grandma's famous pies now, baked by Ellie, working from handwritten recipe cards, with margins full of notes and adjustments. In winter, this winter, the bare branches trace dark lines against the white sky, like sentences waiting to be written. I've been writing at that desk for the past week. Not the novel I've claimed to be working on for years, but something more honest. Letters to Grandma Margaret. Letters full of regret and remembrance, apology and gratitude. Letters she will never read, but that somehow help me process the weight of her absence and my role in creating the distance between us long before she left. Today is December 25th, 1 year since the empty chair at her table became permanent. The farmhouse is full against cousins from California, Arizona, and Florida. Second cousins I barely know. My mother, now retired, and considering a move back east to be closer to family. We've resumed the tradition of Christmas dinner in the big dining room. Everyone crowded around the table that has witnessed generations of family milestones. The holiday china and hand-crocheted placemats are set exactly as they were last year, as they have been for decades. But one thing is different. I am here, sitting in the chair that bears my name. The chair that remained empty last Christmas, while I sat alone in my Boston apartment. The career I'd prioritized providing cold comfort in the face of voluntary solitude. The question that has haunted me for a year, why didn't I go, remains unanswerable in any satisfying way. There was no insurmountable obstacle, no genuine emergency, no legitimate reason that outweighed the invitation she extended. There was only the gradual erosion of priorities, the slow drift toward isolation disguised as ambition, the countless small choices to disconnect rather than engage. Last night, unable to sleep in my childhood bed, I wrote her another letter by the dim light of a desk lamp. Dear Grandma, tomorrow will be the first Christmas dinner in this house without you at the head of the table. Ellie has taken on the cooking with determination, if not quite your practiced ease. The pies aren't as perfect, the crust a little too thick in places, but she made them with so much love that I think you would approve anyway. I keep asking myself the same question. Why didn't I come last year? What was so important that I couldn't spare 3 days to be with family, to be with you one last time? The promotion I was chasing came through in February. The client presentation I was perfecting was well received. The career milestones I prioritized above our relationship were achieved, and none of it matters now. I would trade every professional accomplishment, every dollar earned, every moment of recognition for one more conversation with you, one more chance to sit at this table while you were still at its head, one more opportunity to say the things I left unsaid for too long. You told me on our last phone call, "It's okay if you don't come." I understand. I've replayed those words 1,000 times, searching for the hurt or disappointment I deserved to hear. But there was none, only acceptance and unconditional love, even as I was choosing, yet again, to be absent. What I wouldn't give to hear your voice now, to have you tell me it's still okay, that you still understand, that the distance I created doesn't diminish what we meant to each other. My greatest regret isn't just missing that final Christmas. It's all the moments before, the gradual pulling away, the increasing rarity of visits, the shortened phone calls, the growing gap between who we were to each other and what I allowed us to become. The question, why didn't I go, haunts me, not because I don't know the answer, but because I do. I didn't go because I had stopped prioritizing the relationships that truly matter. I had convinced myself that success meant advancement, achievement, acquisition, not connection, presence, or love. I sit at your writing desk now, looking out at the orchard, where you taught me to pick apples without bruising them, where you showed me how to tell which ones would be sweetest, where you patiently explained why we leave some for the birds and deer, even when they're perfect for pies. Tomorrow, I'll sit in the chair that was empty last year. I'll break bread with the family I neglected. I'll listen to stories about youth, the ones I've heard before, and the ones I missed by being absent for so long. And I'll try to be the grandson you always believed I was, even when my actions suggested otherwise. I can't undo my absence. I can't reclaim the conversations we'll never have, but I can honor what you tried to teach me until the very end, that there is always a place at the table if we choose to take it. I love you, Grandma, and I'm finally here. James, this morning, as everyone gathered in the living room to open presents, my cousin Ellie handed me a small package wrapped in faded paper I recognized immediately, the vintage Santa print Grandma had been reusing for as long as I could remember, carefully folding it each year to preserve it for the next Christmas. Found this in her closet when we were cleaning things out, Ellie explained, her voice soft. It has your name on it. Must have been meant for last year. The small tag, written in Grandma's unmistakable handwriting, read simply, "For James, open when you're ready." My hands trembled as I carefully unwrapped the package, preserving the paper out of habit and respect. Inside was a small wooden box. I recognized the one that had sat on her bedside table for decades, the one that contained her most precious keepsakes, and inside the box, a collection of treasures that stole my breath. The first page of a story I'd written at age 10, with her encouraging comments in the margins. A pressed maple leaf from the tree that used to stand outside my bedroom window, the one that fell in a thunderstorm the summer I turned 16. A photograph of us at my college graduation, her pride evident in the way she held my arm, both of us squinting in the May sunshine. And beneath it all, an envelope with my name on it. Inside, a letter dated December 20th of last year, 5 days before the Christmas I didn't attend, 8 days before she left us. My dearest James, if you're reading this, you've finally made it back to Vermont. I don't know if I'll be there when you do, but either way, I'm glad you've come home. I understand why you've stayed away. The world is big and full of important things to accomplish, and sometimes the quiet of these hills feels very far from the life you've built. I was young once too, eager to prove myself, certain that success meant moving forward rather than returning to roots. But I've lived long enough to learn that the most meaningful journeys often bring us full circle, back to the places and people that shaped us, not as a retreat or surrender, but as a homecoming, a recognition that who we are is inseparable from where we began. Your grandfather's desk is yours now. He would be so proud of the man you've become, though he might gently suggest, as he often did to me, that true success isn't measured in titles or achievements, but in the depth of our connections and the lives we touch along the way. When you sit at that desk, remember that your words matter, not just the ones you write for others to read, but the ones you speak to those you love, while there's still time to say them. I've saved a chair for you at every family gathering, even when you couldn't fill it. I'll continue to do so in whatever way I can, from wherever I am. Some bonds transcend presence and absence alike. It's okay if you couldn't come for Christmas. It's okay if work and life pulled you elsewhere. It's okay if years pass between visits. What matters is that you carry this place and our love with you wherever you go, and that eventually, when you're ready, you find your way back. I understand more than you know, and I love you more than words even yours could ever express. Always, Grandma. I read her letter through tears, surrounded by family in the living room where so many Christmases had been celebrated, including the one I chose to miss. Her words, written when she must have suspected she might not have many days left, contained no recrimination, no guilt, no pressure, only love and understanding, extended across time and space, and even beyond her final breath. Why didn't I go? The question has echoed in my mind for a year, growing louder with each passing month. But Grandma Margaret, in her final gift to me, offered an answer I hadn't considered. Perhaps the more important question isn't why I stayed away, but how I choose to return, not just physically to this place, but emotionally to the connections I neglected for too long. This afternoon, I helped Ellie carry Grandma's holiday china from the cabinet to the dining table. Each plate, carefully stored in tissue paper, just as Grandma had always done, felt like a tangible link between past and present. As we arranged them around the table, Ellie shared memories of helping Grandma prepare for holidays, past stories I'd missed by being absent, fragments of family history I could have been part of if I'd made different choices. She never stopped talking about you, you know, Ellie said as we placed the hand-crocheted placemats in their positions, always telling the little ones about their cousin James, who writes beautiful stories, who lives in the big city, who's going to be famous someday. The words landed like stones in my stomach. I should have been here more. Ellie's hand on my arm was gentle but firm. Yes, you should have. But you're here now. That's what matters. Is it enough? I asked, the question that had circled my mind for months finally finding voice. It has to be, she replied simply. It's all we have. As the family gathered around the table, filling the dining room with the comfortable chaos of multiple conversations, past dishes, and clinking glasses, I found myself watching more than participating, observing the intricate web of relationships that had continued to evolve in my absence. Cousins who had grown closer, children who had formed bonds with granddads and uncles, connections that had strengthened while I focused on career advancement thousands of miles away. The chair I occupied, the one that had remained empty last Christmas, no longer felt like my natural place. I was simultaneously insider and outsider, family member and stranger, present, yet still finding my way back to true belonging. After dinner, as others moved to the living room for games and conversation, I remained at the table, running my fingers over the crocheted placemat beneath my plate. Grandma Margaret had made these when I was a child, her fingers working the hook with practiced precision while she listened to me read aloud from whatever book had captured my imagination that summer. You okay? My mother's voice broke into my thoughts as she settled into the chair beside me, a cup of tea steaming between her hands. Just thinking, I replied. About Grandma. About all the times I should have been here, but wasn't. She nodded, her expression soft with understanding. She knew you loved her, James, even when you were absent. But was that enough? I asked, echoing my earlier question to Ellie. To love someone from a distance, to carry them in your heart but not make the effort to be physically present. My mother considered this, her eyes drifting to the darkened window that reflected our images back at U's mother and son, talking quietly at a table surrounded by empty chairs. It wasn't ideal, she said finally, for either of you, but it was what you could give at the time. I could have given more, I admitted, the truth I'd been avoiding for a year. I chose not to. Yes, she agreed, not unkindly. And that's something you'll have to make peace with in your own time, in your own way. But James, she placed her hand over mine. Don't let regret over what you didn't do for Grandma prevent you from being present now with those of us who are still here. Her words struck deeper than she could know, illuminating the pattern I was in danger of repeating, allowing guilt over past absences to create emotional distance in the present, perpetuating the very disconnection I claimed to regret. That night, back in my childhood bedroom, I sat at my grandfather's desk and began a new document on my laptop. Not another letter to Grandma Margaret, though I would continue those, finding comfort in the one-sided conversation, but the novel I'd claimed to be writing for years. The story that had been an excuse for my absence rather than a genuine creative pursuit. As my fingers moved across the keyboard, words flowing more freely than they had in years, I felt a subtle shift within myself. The chair that had remained empty last Christmas could never be filled in the same way again. The opportunity to be present for Grandma Margaret's final holiday had passed beyond reclaiming. But other chairs, other tables, other gatherings remained available to Miff. I chose to be present for them. The answer to why didn't I go remained simple, yet devastating in its truth. Because I prioritized the wrong things. Valued achievement over connection, mistook professional advancement for meaningful success. The harder question, the one I was only beginning to address, was why didn't I understand what I was losing until it was gone? And perhaps the most important question of all, what will I do differently now, with those who remain? As I wrote into the early hours of December 26th, snow falling softly outside the window, just as it had fallen on Grandma Margaret's cemetery a year ago, I made a silent promise to her memory, and to myself. The empty chair, the physical absence I could never undo, would become a reminder rather than just a regret. A tangible symbol of the cost of disconnection, and a commitment to ensure that my presence, from this point forward, would be offered as freely as hers had always been. In her letter, Grandma had written, "I've saved a chair for you at every family gathering, even when you couldn't fill it. I'll continue to do so, in whatever way I can, from wherever I am." My gift back to her memory would be to fill those chairs not just physically, but wholly. To be truly present for the connections that remain. To prioritize the relationships that matter most, before more chairs stand empty. More tables bear names without bodies to claim them. More questions begin with, why didn't I? Today, my present is indeed an empty chair and a question. But tomorrow and all the tomorrows that follow are the chance to answer that question not with words, but with presence. With showing up. With being here now. While there's still time to matter in the ways that truly count. "It's okay if you don't come," she had said, offering absolution I hadn't earned. "I'm here now," I whisper to the empty room, to the falling snow, to whatever part of her might still linger in this house she loved. And I'll keep coming back, I promise. It isn't enough to erase what was lost, but it's a beginning, reclamation of what remains, and a commitment to never again mistake absence for achievement or distance for success. The empty chair remains. The question lingers. But alongside them, a path forward emerges, one that leads not away from connection, but back toward its center, where Grandma Margaret always knew the true meaning of success could be found. Narrated by James 31, who lost his grandmother Margaret.